Power. Friday evening. I know we are just getting done with our Thanksgiving dinners and just with our families. I'm hoping you can join us for this important conversation. Please go ahead and share. Let's give it a couple minutes for people to join. This is time for me to also share with my friends. That way, they can join us for this important conversation today. Well, welcome. If you're joining, let me know where you're watching from. This is Delma Achak, founder of the Immigrant Mom, and we have two important personalities with us today. We're going to talk about lessons from my immigrant parents. All right, let's get sharing.
Remember, you told me always smile, but some days I really sad, 'cause it wasn't easy. Still I had to find a way. This way them say better they stay. This one no be mount.
Let me know where you're watching from. I'm just taking some time to share on my timeline so we can get more people.
My mother tell her I remember. If you help me see my sister, tell her I remember. Any matter, tell them me don't better. Yo. Anywhere you see my mother, tell her I remember. If you help me see my sister, tell her I remember.
I see people are tuning in. Let me know where you're watching from. Say hi.
Remember when you told me, be careful of them. Say if them touch your lap, oh, you go carry belly. Oh, I remember. I remember. You my life now history. 'Cause it wasn't easy. Still I had to find a way. If wishes were hustling, I go hold on for neck. This one don't be mouth, I will never let you down. I say yo. Anywhere you see my mother, tell her I remember. If you help me see my sister, tell her I remember. Any matter, tell them me don't better. Yo. Anywhere you see my mother, tell her I remember. If you help me see my sister, tell her I remember. Any matter, tell them me.
Thank you for joining. Instinct is watching all the way from Maryland. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. Please go ahead and share so many more people can join us. Today we're going to be talking about lessons from my immigrant parents. Hi, Auntie Sue. Thank you for joining. Appreciate your presence. Please go ahead and share your timeline so many more people can join We're just going to give it a few more minutes and we'll get started. I believe we have a number of things to talk about today. So in the interest of time, we'll get started soon. I can see a lot more people are coming on. Thank you for joining. Thank you. This is the Immigrant Mom show. The Immigrant Mom Power. Hi, Antoinette. Thank you for joining. Hi, Mandela. Thank you for joining. Good to your presence.
Remember when you told me always smile, but some days I
hope
really
you guys are enjoying this track. I really like it.
Wasn't easy. Still I had to find a way.
Once you join, please go ahead and share so we can get more people in the house. Right? It's Friday evening, what are you doing? This is a great end so we can have some good conversation. Because what you know is what propels you forward in your life. But what you don't know, you cannot act on it. So it's always great when there is an opportunity for information to be shared. Because you never know what piece you would need for the next step of your life. So this is not just us, wanting to be in your face and in your house. It's about us sharing important information that I believe it makes such a difference in your life. All right, guys. Well, welcome once again. My name is Extel Mbaacha. I am the founder of the Immigrant Mom organization. The Immigrant Mom is the first of its kind in the United States that caters to women who are raising children in a culture that they did not grow. I love to tell this story before I start on for those who are watching us for the first time, just so you can have an understanding. I'm an immigrant mother. I came to this country about 10 years ago. I'm originally from Cameroon with two little kids. Well, I didn't come with them. I had them here. And just, wondering about what I don't know simply because I was not raised here just put me in a place where, I really felt vulnerable. And I felt that there needed to be an organization where moms, immigrant moms, could come together and support each other. People who have been here longer can tell us what they have done, what has worked, what has not worked. We can talk about a lot of topics that apply to us as immigrant mothers, and that's why this organization exists. We have a lot of programs and a lot of projects, and we actually have a group called the Immigrant Mom Group. So if you are an immigrant mom and you're not yet a part of that group, please join us, because we have, we share a lot of information. We have fun time. We're open about opportunities. If you need a job, you're just coming to the US, please join us there. Well, last week we had a very emotional session. We were talking about how to deal with the pain of losing a child. And so we had two immigrant mothers, well, one immigrant mother and the other who was not an immigrant mom, share about how they have handled the pain of losing their child. And if you have not watched that session, please go onto our page. The video is on there. It was powerful, it was emotional. We learned quite a bit from it. And today we're going to be talking to two public officials who are not immigrant moms. Well, there's a dad on here as a guest, but they are children of immigrant parents. So they're on the other side of who we are or what we do, telling us, like from hindsight, taking us maybe 20 years into the future about what we need to know with regards to raising our children in this culture. So I'll just go right ahead and introduce them. I'm not going to say too much because I really want them to tell us for themselves who they are. But because people try to be modest, and I know they're going to be modest in their introduction, I'll tell you a little more before I bring them on. Shall we? Okay. So Lauren is a guest, and I'll just bring her on here while I'm reading what I have to say about her. So, Honorable Lauren, she is a dedicated public servant who won election to fill the unexpired term of her predecessor, Honorable Eric Johnson. Her path to public service began long ago by following a powerful example in her life. Lauren credits her father for instilling in her persistence and commitment to service. Her father, hear this, her father is an immigrant single parent who was one of a handful of Black scientists at UT Southwestern. Lauren followed that example by serving in various capacities at federal, state, and local levels of government. Most notably, she has worked with former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, Congressman Mark Vesey, former State Senator Wendy Davis, former Mayor Mike Rawlings, County Judge Clay Jenkins, over a dozen current and former judges, as labor unions to shape legislation and policy for the benefit of working people. That's a lot, I know, but thank you so much for joining us, Honorable Lauren. I'm so pleased to have you here. And, before I would let you tell us more about you, let me introduce our second guest. That way he is on the stream. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about Kojo. So Kojo Asamao Caesar is a first generation American, the son of a certified nursing assistant and a taxi driver who were drawn to the United States from Ghana by the call of the American dream. Then went on to study law at the College of William and Mary. After graduating, rather going for a legal career, he decided to go into teaching. He actually decided to move to Tulsa as a kindergarten teacher. We have to get into that. There's so much I want to know about that. And so Kojo was asked to serve as a founding principal of Greenwood Leadership Academy in North Tulsa in 2017. This year, he ran for Congress in Oklahoma. And there's a lot more he will share with us about that journey. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. And just give me 1 second. I get an echo. Okay. I hope that fixes it. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us at the Immigrant Mom and for your willingness to share. So I'll let you go first. Honorable Lauren, tell us a little more about.
Um, Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I'm going to apologize in advance. You know, when I get comfortable, sometimes I might switch to Pidgin English. So
That would be good, but we just don't know if all our audience would understand Pidgin.
so I'm going to apologize in advance just in case it happens. But my name is Representative Lorraine Burata Birbil. Burata is my native name. My dad named me that when I was born because he said the worries are over. That's what it translates to into my language. And then he always says, well, I didn't know they were actually just beginning, all his worries. But in any case, you know, that what you read from my bio is absolutely correct. I don't think that I would be the person that I am today in terms of my work ethic, in terms of the tenacity that really has carried me through any challenge that I have faced. And I learned that from my dad. And he came here, he wasn't even 18 when he came to this country. As many of you in your audience may know, in Nigeria, you finish school before 18. And so most people in Nigeria finish school, secondary school, when they're 16. And so my dad came here as a very young person without anybody. And literally on his own from the moment that he got here. The time that he immigrated to the United States, he was on an academic scholarship. At that time, Nigeria, as many of you might be familiar with, was a new country. We gained our independence in 1960. Well, as time went on, some of you may also be aware that Nigeria then became overrun with military dictators. And so many people, the story of my father is really the story of so many immigrants of that generation. From West Africa, from the standpoint that there were people who came here for education or different reasons that they came here, but then became stranded. Because, for example, for him and people in his cohort, the scholarship no longer was there because there was a military takeover. Right. And so just having the fortitude to say, you know, my plan was to come here and get an education and go back home. And now I can't because it's a military dictatorship. Right. Now to figure out a plan for life. I can't imagine the difficulty that he faced. But what I know from that and the growth that he experienced in that, he instilled in me. And so literally, if I have my eyes set on something, I do not stop. And I keep going and I keep fighting. And even that spirit, you know, when I was giving birth to my daughter, I channeled my grandmother. My grandmother grew up in a time in Nigeria where girls were not allowed to go to school. And so the 3 degrees I got for her because that, you know, that spirit that she put in me is she's my only living grandmother. You know, the spirit she put in me to say, you know, you can do it. And for her in her life, she didn't have that option. She is now, you know, obviously I shouldn't say obviously, but she's gone on to be successful in her own right, but with very little education. And so, you know, I think one thing I can honestly say, and I'm sure Kojo would agree with me, when you come from an immigrant background, all of the hopes and dreams of your family, they carry it on through you. Right. And as a child, you feel a responsibility to fulfill those dreams. But some people might take it to say that is so much pressure. But I actually think that aspiration that you are born into actually serves to be a good thing because you should have high expectations. And so, so I'm just really grateful for them pouring into me so I could be who I am.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And we'll get more into it as we go on. You know, when you mention that, you know, being an immigrant child, you carry these aspirations, not just for yourself, but also for the family that you come from. And that's some of the things that we'll talk about throughout today. And thank you for saying that. So, Kojo, I just read a very, very brief introduction of you. I want you to just introduce yourself a little more. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what country. Well, I know you are from here, America. What country your immigrant parents came
Yeah, Honorable Lorraine, that was very prescient of you. I always say it's a gift to be a son of immigrants because it gives you purpose, all right? My mom and my dad made a very serious decision to come to the United States, and they, emigrated from Ghana, West Africa. And as a lot of immigrants do, they had a specific purpose in mind, right? They wanted to be able to build a better life for themselves and for their children, the next generation. And so right then and there, what a gift to give to, right, the next generation. And this sense of ambition and aspiration and sacrifice, and thinking beyond just yourself, right? And so my parents sacrificed. My mom was one of 9 kids, and she applied for the visa, diversity visa lottery. And she was fortunate enough to be one of the few to get that. But that meant she had to leave her father. It was the last time she would see her father because he passed before she was able to return. Leave her siblings and her family and everything she loved, and travel 5,000 miles across the Atlantic to come to this strange land, right? Where you don't know anybody and you have to navigate these waters. And so she came here in 1983, full of hope, right? And then, you have to go through all the different sacrifices. When she got here, the credit, she had the equivalent of a associate's degree in Ghana. When you get here, the credits don't transfer because American institutions don't accept Ghanaian credits, right? So you have to start all over again.
Right.
And then, she had me just 3 short years later, and her and my dad separated. And so now she's a single mom. She's, taking community college classes, and then she's working to try to make ends meet. So that whole struggle as well. And my story's interesting because at the age of 2, finally, her family back home in Ghana convinced her that it was silly for her to struggle in America with a newborn, and that she should send me over to Ghana to be around family and to grow up understanding the values of, my native home. And so at the age of 2, I went and moved to Ghana and lived with my grandma and my auntie and got to meet my cousins. And I returned to the States when I was 10 years old. So I spent 8 years of my formative years in Ghana, learning about all the things that, all the valuable lessons we learn. It takes a village. You got to respect your elders. Anybody that's not your mom or your dad is your uncle or your auntie, right?
So true.
Yeah, the whole notion that, your success is not just your own, and success is really measured by who else have you helped to become successful, and the fact that we're not an island unto ourselves, that we can't succeed without other people. And if we've been fortunate enough to be successful, we know that we stand on the shoulders of giants. All right. And so all of those things informed my journey, and all the decisions I've made up until this point, which is why I can be the first in my family to graduate from college, go to the oldest law school in the nation and graduate, and then decide that I was going to actually become a kindergarten teacher because this notion of the American dream was so huge in my life. Even though my parents, struggled and worked really hard, they never lost faith in this notion of the American dream. And they always tell me, Kojo, you have to be grateful to be in this country. And in this country, it may not be perfect, but you have an opportunity, right? If you're willing to work hard and apply yourself, there's an opportunity to be all that you can be, and anything is possible, all right? And so my journey is animated by the desire to ensure that the American dream that my parents really believed in is actually a reality for as many people as possible. All right. And so that's what animates, and motivates my everyday actions.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to talk about some of the issues that immigrant mothers, are dealing with raising their children in a culture that's different. And I'll ask you this question from your viewpoint, being that you were that child raised by the immigrant mom or the immigrant dad in your case, Honorable Lauren. And to the audience that's watching, please, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section. So when we get to the end, we can ask them questions. The first question is, yes, I understand, because that's what we currently do, instilling values in our children, telling them that they can. But, at the same time, there are real challenges that these children experience because they're different. Your mom was not raised in America, Kojo, and your dad, Lorraine, was not raised. He came from a different culture. So, as a child, did you experience any form of annihilation or rejection or bullying? And if you did, how did you overcome that? And how has that shaped you to be who you are today? I'll let you go first, Honorable Lauren.
So absolutely. The schools, when I would go, instantly people see my name. They know that I'm not originally, and let me just say this, no one is originally American except for the Native Americans. But when I say originally American, meaning that my family hadn't been in this country very long. And so, yeah, I definitely was ridiculed and made fun of and bullied for not being American. And then, but because of, the pride that was instilled in me and my identity and just knowing who I was and where I came from, and then I had so much to be grateful and proud of. That wasn't something that was, I never saw it as a major hurdle. And in fact, when people would do it, I just knew that it was simply their ignorance for not knowing, not being exposed to the world, not having a cultural experience that was truly rich, that reflected the diversity and beauty that is humanity. And
Right.
so that was my view of it. So it's definitely something I dealt with, but it was never something that I felt like held me back.
Right. And as a follow-up question, you mentioned that instilling pride. So there had to have been something that your dad had told you or built around you to instill that pride, that you looked upon the other people's ignorance, or you looked upon it as ignorance. Is there any practical thing he did to instill that pride in you?
Well, I was raised to be Nigerian in many ways. I learned how to cook the food. I don't fluently speak my native tongue, but I do understand and hear some of it. And I'm pretty fluent in Pidgin, and I'm very proud that when I do travel home, people say, "Oh, she must have schooled abroad." They never think that I was born in America, and I'm proud that I'm able to blend in a variety of places. So for me, culturally, I grew up as a Nigerian,
Okay.
and so that I think had a lot to do with my security and my identity.
Nice. Thank you. What about you, Kojo? What was your experience in the school with rejection, bullying, and how has that shaped you so far?
Yeah, I returned to the States at the age of 10, and it was middle of fifth grade. And yeah, the bullying and the ridiculing was, very heavy. I was called African booty scratcher. People threw, at lunchtime, they'll throw banana peels at me and make monkey noises. All right. It was brutal. Kids are harsh. And initially, I, it was tough, but then I had to understand that it said more about them than it did about me. All
Right.
right. And so I kind of realized they were trying to, get a rise out of me, and I wasn't going to give them that. And so I actually turned it on its head and I made it a joke. So when they would say, "Oh, you lived on trees back in Africa," I'd say, "Yes, I did live on trees. But don't feel sorry for me because I lived on a big tree. My family was rich," those kinds of things. And they'll, kids, you see them kind of be taken aback, like, "Is he for real, or what's going on?" Or tell them my mailman was a monkey and the monkeys would deliver the mail. Uh, and so when they realized that that wasn't getting to me, it stopped. Right, it stopped. And I remember very a very important moment in fifth grade. We had a spelling test, and the teacher announced that I was the only student that got every word correct, right? And it turns out that there was one word that tripped a lot of people up. It was the word laboratory, all right? And because us Ghanaians and Africans, we emphasize every syllable and every word. I say laboratory, so I'm able to spell it right. Americans say laboratory, right?
Right.
And so they miss that A in the middle, all right? And so it was awesome to see everybody turn and look at me like, what? This guy that has a thick accent, can barely speak English, got all these words correct. And so it became a thing where I was proud to surprise people, right? I know you don't think I am capable. I know because you see my name or you hear my accent that you think I'm less than, but I'm going to show you that I'm not. All right. And so it became a challenge, right, to live up to the high standards and to change the narrative that others may have about us and use those moments as teaching moments. All right. Because, as Honorable Lauren said, they're watching National Geographic or whatever it is that the media is portraying about Africa. They're watching Feed the Children with kids with big bellies and flies on their faces. And so when they think about Africa, that's what they think of. And so for me, it was like, how can I be a different representation of what Africa truly is and inspire curiosity in them to go learn more. All right. And so, yeah. And my parents, the things that I think sending me back to grow up in Ghana was amazing because I had an authentic Ghanaian upbringing and experience. And it wasn't something that I was sad about. Actually, I was proud to have grown up in Ghana, and it was the best time of my life. And I was sad to leave my friends and family, and it was a joyful upbringing. All right, even though we didn't have a whole lot, I was proud to be Ghanaian, and so I wouldn't let anybody speak down on that.
Oh, that's great that you say that. There's an echo. I'm not sure. Okay, the echo's gone. It seems you might have me on two platforms, Kojo. Maybe there's you may have another link on Facebook, but there's an echo coming from your end. Hopefully we can get that sorted. All right, I was just going to add to what you said that one of my friends who came to America as a kid, she was in high school, and she noted that, because of the accent and because of the way, she looked different from the other kids in class, they used to ridicule her, and she made up her mind that excellence was going to be the way in which she would show, her value. And because she was excellent in her academics and excellent even in sports, that gained some respect in school. And, I could totally see how that applied in your own scenario. Another thing I wanted to bring up to ask the both of you is, in our culture, in our African culture, and many other cultures, not just Africa, there is a tendency where we say, suck it up. You don't need to talk about it. Ignore them. Now that you are where you are in your career, do you think that is something we should be passing on to our kids? Or should we tell them to be more assertive, and that assertiveness is not to say you're confrontational or you're violent or you are the bully, but to assert and take a stand for yourself? What would you say to that, Honorable Lauren?
I think every person has their way that they best express themselves. And so I don't think there's a one-stop shop solution. But I do think that in terms of navigating life, it's always important to be able to be a good communicator. And I think part of that, at least for me in my experience, when I encounter people who may say things that or just because they don't know, right, or judgmental because they just don't know, they don't have the exposure as we've been talking about, I use that as a teaching moment. And my heart really goes out to people who say these kind of things because of their lack of knowledge or experience or exposure. Because in reality, I think it's more so about their insecurity. The reason why they are saying what they're saying and doing what they're doing is because of their own insecurity. And so using that as an opportunity to say, if you want to learn more about this place that you don't know about, I'm happy to. one of the best and easiest ways to teach people, and the funnest ways, is really through food. I think food is such a great introduction to culture. Everyone loves food. And so I found that that's always a really good way to introduce culture to people. But particularly among African Americans, my philosophy, I see myself as someone who is Pan-African. I think that people who are people of color throughout the world, and we are truly all over the world, we face struggles wherever we are. When you get pulled over by a police officer, no one says, how long has your family been in this country?
Right.
That's not the question.
Right.
And so I think we have a lot more in common sometimes than I think people in general realize. And I try to base things and work from the commonality in order to teach people.
Right. Right. Okay. Before we even, I wanted to ask Kojo the same question, but I just wanted to jump into public office because it ties down. So maybe Kojo, you can answer that. What motivated you? Congress, child of an immigrant, go from, being raised to, we're just gonna get by. We're just here because we want a better life. We're not here to change anything. This is not our country. Just make sure you come home safe. That's all I care about. Just pass the exams. So now wanting to be part of the change.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Growing up, it wasn't explicitly spoken, but I got the sense very clearly that what my parents desired for me was, feel grateful that you're in this country to begin with. It's not your country. You're in somebody else's country. So don't ruffle any feathers. Don't rock the boat. Stay under the radar. Study hard, work hard, and hope for the best, right? And you understand that racism is a thing. White supremacy is a thing. You can't do anything about it. Matter of fact, I was encouraged to do something technical. Become an engineer, right? Become a doctor. Do something where it's not subjective, so nobody can really discriminate against you because they can't deny your technical skills. And you're supposed to make decisions based on this, right? And that was tough for me growing up to accept. And, I was a school principal, not really even paying attention to politics. But there was one news report that stopped me in my tracks. It was a report that the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, sitting in the Oval Office, the most powerful office in the world, was talking to his staff. And he was wondering out loud, how come we didn't have more immigrants coming from the Nordic countries like Sweden, all right? And instead, we were stuck with these immigrants coming from, his words, shithole countries, all right? And that they overstay their visa because they don't want to return to the mud huts they came from. And that stopped me in my tracks because he was talking about me. Here I am. I could have gone and made 6 figures after law school. I decided I wanted to serve this country. I wanted to ensure that every kid, no matter what they look like, had equal opportunity and access to the American dream. All right. My parents came here. They broke their back. They worked really hard. They were contributing. They were law-abiding citizens, right? And so many other immigrants. And so, as Honorable Lorraine said, unless you're Native American, your family came from somewhere else. So in fact, our nation is a nation of immigrants. All right. And it's just a matter of when you came here and under what circumstances you came here. But Africans, make a huge contribution to our country. We pay taxes just like everybody else, right? We are inventors, we're doctors, nurses, we're essential workers and frontline workers and all that, right? And so that was really kind of the impetus for me really even starting to think about politics and to present a counter narrative to this false story that the president and so many others were telling about our people. All right. And I realized that, politics is not a spectator sports, right? You have to be on the field. All right. And if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and nobody is going to advocate on our behalf. All right. So we have to have that confidence to realize that, no, this is my country. All right. And I'm not going to play second-class citizen to anybody. Right. And I too have to lift my voice. All right.
Oh, that's really powerful that you say that. That just hit a chord with me. Because you're saying, and this is the message that I really want us to get. We are not second class citizens, and nobody should make you feel that way. If you are not on the table, you are the menu. So for so long, we would go about thinking that, no, we just came by, we're just going to hide. But I think it's time. And that's what, I captioned this entire session. It's time for us to know that there's a seat at the table, and we've got to fill the seat at the table, because decisions are made about things that affect us and affect our children. Thank you for saying that. And Honorable Lorraine, what was your motivation? Did you experience with your dad? Was it more like stay under the radar? You're not from here, you are Nigerian, just do the most, be a doctor and make some money for yourself? And if that was the case or not, why did you get into public office?
Well, my experience is a little bit different. And I'm just going to share from my heart. So, as you mentioned, my dad and his background, he was a scientist. He was literally one of a handful of Black scientists at UT Southwestern, which is one of the top medical schools in the country. And I would hear stories all the time of some of the things, derogatory things that he experienced on the job, by virtue of being an immigrant, by virtue of being Black, by virtue of having an accent. People assume a whole lot of things about you, things that people say. Sometimes people say, well, speak English. Well, he's speaking the Queen's English, which I would argue is a more formal and more proper form of English. But not only that, but even the experience in this country, I literally, I'm going to try to make this short, but it's hard. One of the things that I experienced when my dad and I here in this country, we called the police for help. We had a trespasser on the property. They refused to leave. One of the people that accompanied the trespasser was Anglo. And when the police got there, they were taking the Anglo person's statement, even though my dad was the homeowner. And
when you say Anglo, what do you mean by Anglo?
White.
It was white. Okay.
And so I was the person who called the police for help. We live in Texas. I think people all around the country know Texas's reputation for concealed handguns and open carry and all those things. And so I was legitimately concerned and frightened for our safety. We called the police to be assisted, to tell them to leave the property. And instead, the police officers brutally assaulted my father in front of me. And I was arrested because I recorded it. And, this is someone who, my dad is a retired neuroscientist, extremely brilliant. He's probably one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. Myself, my background's in public service. I have 3 degrees. I'm no slouch. And if it could happen to us, it could happen to anybody. Mm-hmm. That's just a fact of the matter. A lot of times people have this perception about criminal justice reform, for better or worse, that it only affects people who are maybe wrong place, wrong time. Maybe they've had run-ins with the law in the past, and that's why they're in that situation. I can give you firsthand testimony. It can happen to anyone. And we were definitely profiled, and my dad was definitely treated a certain way because of the way he looked, the way he sounded. The officers didn't seem to value what he thought or said because he was an immigrant. That was definitely a part of it, and because he was a Black man. And so, for me, running for office was deeply personal. It was because of our experience in this country. My husband, who's also Nigerian American, he's Nigerian American like me. His mom, who was a registered nurse, I'm sure a lot of people in this community, in this forum that we're in, know people who are either in nursing or industry or in the nursing industry themselves, working, serving others. When she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, Texas's policies have been very devastating for working people. Does not offer expanded Medicaid. And so had she lived in any other state that had expanded Medicaid, she would have had the health care she needed and probably would have been diagnosed earlier. But because she decided to live in Texas, she didn't have the access to care that she needed when she needed it. Although every person in Texas paid for access to this care. And so me running for the state house was a direct relationship to how government affects people every day, and personally how it affected my family.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's deep. To even, I mean, to think about it, to see your father assaulted in front of you, it's not something anybody, no child, no matter how old you are, would want to experience that. Now that you both have been exposed to a lot more than the average immigrant kid or immigrant parent, I know that a lot of us are leaving too much on the table because we're trying to just get by. So, what, and I know there's a lot, you can just talk about the few that you know. What are we as immigrants, as immigrant children and immigrant parents leaving on the table that we should be taking advantage of or making good use of for the mere fact that it's available?
I'm not sure if you wanted, I don't know if there's a speaker order.
Whatever, Lauren can go first.
That's a really hard question because, and Kojo, feel free to agree or disagree. I feel like immigrant parents are among the most resourceful. I really find it hard to think of there was, I'm sure there's always things that we don't think of that are possible that we should explore. But I really feel like my dad left it all out on the front line, trying to do a good job and raise me on his own, being in this country by himself, essentially. So I would say to the parent that's literally, and I'm sure you are, if you're listening right now, that you're literally doing everything you can to be a good parent and provide and raise someone who is going to contribute to the world. You're doing everything you can, I'm sure. So along those lines, don't beat yourself up. I think you also should take some time to reflect on the blessings that you have. Obviously appropriate because yesterday was Thanksgiving, but also because you're doing everything that you can, take solace in that. I know we do have a tendency, especially, if you're new in this country, I'm a first generation American as well. You have a tendency to think, well, what more could I have done? What else can I do? I want to leave it all out on the line and make sure I've explored every possible option. And, hindsight is always 2020, of course, but just know, as long as you're doing everything you possibly can, that is as much as you can do. Right. I think also making sure, and I'm a new parent, so I'm not going to claim to know all the advice on that, but really also just making sure that I've just thought about something. So many parents, and I don't know if this is the case for everyone listening, but at least in our community, in the Nigerian community, you're raised to go into these technical fields. And Kojo brought that up earlier: lawyer, doctor, engineer, accountant.
Right.
And I fall into stereotypes. I went to law school. My husband's an accountant, but I think that really comes from knowing the struggle that we face when we come to this country and wanting to make sure that our kids are in a place where they can provide for themselves, because there isn't a trust fund to go to, right? A lot of times there isn't an inheritance to fall back on, because literally most of our parents literally worked and lived check to check to make sure that they could provide for their family. And also, not to mention, send money back home because someone's sick or someone needs help, or you're trying to build a home back home because one day you'd like to retire. Right. And retire in your homeland, your native homeland where you grew up. And so there are so many directions that you're being pulled in. Give yourself some grace, but also don't be afraid to think outside the box. And your child can still be successful if they're not a lawyer, doctor, accountant, engineer. My dad certainly did not plan on being a scientist at UC Southwestern. But that was the path that he ended up going, based on all the factors that happened in his life. And so I would say keep an open mind, because you can be successful as long as you have tenacity.
Right. Thank you. Kojo.
Yeah, I mean, you said it all. What I do want to add is kind of where you ended up. I think um, we don't want to limit or put a ceiling on what our children can achieve, right? And so I remember very vividly I was a senior in high school, and I was in my room plotting out my future and all the different things I wanted to be, like a sports agent or a TV broadcaster, right? And all these dreams I had, and my parents would shoot them down, right? And it was with good intention, because yeah, they want me to be able to take care of myself. They don't want me with pie in the sky dreams. But the message they were sending was, hey, you have two strikes against you. You're black and you're African, all right? And you don't have rich parents, and you have to be able to so go do this instead. But what they didn't realize was they were crushing my dreams. All right. They were saying that, Kojo, don't dream big. Lower your expectations because of who you are and because of where you are. Right. And that was not
Right.
That was damaging. I'll just be frank. That was damaging to my self-esteem, right? And how I thought about myself. And I hear a lot of other kids in my, kind of same situation coming up, and they're getting those same messages. It's delivered with love and with good intention, but the impact of it is not positive, right? And so I think you should have more faith in your kids and tell them the truth about your experiences and, the truth about America, but then, ensure that you're giving them hope and ensuring that you trust them to be able to navigate those waters while still shooting for the sky, all right? Because everything our people have been through has given us so many internal resources and fortitude and resilience, right? And all that stuff. And so let's not leave that on the table, all right? Really quick story. When I went back to Ghana, after I graduated from college, I went back to Ghana to visit, and I got a chance to go to Elmina Slave Castle, which was right on the coast, which was where a lot of the human beings that were enslaved would be held before they walked through the door of no return and into the bowels of the ship to go through the middle passage to come to the new world. And the tour guide was telling the story of the journey that it took, right, for somebody. Sometimes they have to walk 30 miles just to get to the slave castle. And a lot of people died on the trip there. And then once they got to the slave castle, they were put in dungeons, all right, the male slave dungeon and the female slave dungeon. And they were eating in the same places where they were defecating. And a lot of people died there. And then if you were belligerent, you were beaten. And a lot of, women got raped and killed there, right? And then if you were able to survive all of that, your reward was you got into the bowels of the ship, all right? And then we know so many people that died through the middle passage. And if you made it through all of that, then you got to the new world and somewhere in South Carolina or Alabama, and you were on the, block to be sold and to work in the hot sun, right, for 400 years, right? And so the point that the tour guide wanted to make was that those people are not human. They're not normal human. They're superhuman, right? He's like, if I had a message to deliver to African Americans in America, it would be that blood that pulses through you is connected to those folks, right? And that is amazing to go through all of that, right? And so believe in yourself. Don't use that history to denigrate or to, lower your self-esteem. Use it as a sense of pride to say, if they went through all of that, what a legacy they've left me. And how much more can I do and accomplish in this world? They went through things that were even crazier than we're going through now. All right. So I want it to be a story of hope. And I want us to infuse our kids with super confidence that they can say, I can achieve anything, no matter what I decide to do, as long as I'm willing to commit myself to it fully and work hard at it. The sky's the limit.
Awesome. And I was going to just ask you this question since we're talking about resilience and hope. You ran for Congress. You did not win, but I saw a post where you put up that you had more votes than ever. How are you able to bounce back? What's the plan moving forward?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you run. I ran to win, right? You're not just running to get a whole lot of votes. You're running to win. So first, you acknowledge that you didn't win, all right? You didn't win. But then you look at the moral victories. And yeah, to be able to get 109,455 votes, there are a lot of people sitting in Congress right now with lesser votes, right? And understanding that I'm in Oklahoma, I'm in the only state where Barack Obama did not win a single county in both of his elections. So it is an uphill climb, but we are breaking barriers, right?
Right.
And so yeah, so you take it all in stride, and you realize that you're building, to something. And a lot of the messages that we received from people after the election was so positive. And it was like, don't go away. We need you. We need you to keep building, because you represent the kind of change that we need in places like this. Interestingly enough, in 2016, after Donald Trump won, a lot of people were upset, and people were like, I'm moving to Canada, right? And I'm moving. and there was a meme that said, don't move to Canada, move to a red state in the middle of the country and help turn it blue, right? That's what we really need. And so I think we're doing, being in Texas, right? Texas, I think it was within 5 points, or as close as it's been in a while. So it's very possible, all right? And we're doing, in my mind, the Lord's work, and trying to change hearts and minds, and to be competitive in places where, Democrats or people that look like us haven't really been given a chance for so long.
Right.
So I'm committed to that work and doing that work, for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. Honorable Lauren, I know as well, same situation. You're going to be, I guess, you ran for election in June of 2020, and you lost that election, I believe. And so you're going to be moving on to another office, or just tell us more what's coming next, and how did you take that?
Well, my journey was, I'll say it was interesting. So I was elected in January. I had 4 elections in the period of a year. And so I literally had my baby on a Sunday. She's 18 months now. Had my baby on a Sunday. The following Friday, graduated from law school, walked across the stage. And the following day, our current mayor finished first in the first round of voting. And so from that time, people were calling. I lived in the neighborhood a long time, worked in various levels of service, federal, state, and local. And people wanted to know if I was going to run with this newborn child in my hand. And so my husband and I had a decision to make pretty quickly. And we were off to the races. We had an election in last November, which was the first round of the special election. We were finished first. We had a runoff where I won that election, which allowed me to serve in the current role that I have. Then we had the March primary. So literally every 2 months, essentially, I was on the ballot. And then so we finished first in the primary, and then in the runoff, as everyone knows, we were in the coronavirus pandemic. And so a key strategy that I had used all throughout was block walking. And I had a decision to make. And me having a STEM undergrad degree, I knew and understood virus transmission, pretty well. And understood, and with my dad being a neuroscientist, of course, at a medical school for a long time, I think I had a pretty good idea, more than the average person, about how all of that worked. And so I had to make a decision. And I decided that we were going to suspend person-to-person campaigning to help stop the spread. We did not want to contribute to community spread of coronavirus. We also know that communities of color particularly have been devastated by coronavirus, and I was just not going to contribute to that. And so we converted all of our campaign efforts to other methods. We came up short by 90 votes. My opponent did not suspend in-person campaigning. And so that's where we are right now. But I was not going to have that on my conscience. I feel that when you put yourself out there to say that you're going to serve the community, that you fulfill that commitment.
Right.
And part of that commitment is doing what's best for the community, even though it may not be best for you individually.
Right.
So I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do. We've been helping connect people during this crisis that we're in, getting people unemployment benefits, helping people with housing. As you know, so many people have not been able to stay in their home for a variety of reasons related to coronavirus. And so many people have been affected from decisions by, I feel like, a man who does not care about people, who's the current president. And unfortunately, working class people, have been affected in a tremendous way because of that lack of care.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've literally been doing everything we can, setting up testing sites, literally every single thing we can to help people during this crisis. And so I will continue doing that until my term winds up, which is in January. And after that, I'm going to continue serving. I've always worked in public service. It's just my first time in an elected capacity.
Okay.
And moving on and put my life on hold to not focus on the bar exam because of this campaign. And so I'm going to wrap that up as well.
That's awesome. We're almost wrapping up with our time, but I wanted to ask this question to the both of you, to those who are listening, who can identify with you, who say you're doing great work, in Oklahoma, here in Dallas, Fort Worth area. How can we be a part of what you're doing? How can we support you? Because the work is unending, and we would like to. So just tell, tell the audience, in what capacity can we support? I'll let Honorable Lauren go first.
Okay. So one thing, and I mentioned this earlier, I've always been engaged. Before serving, I was a precinct chair for a long time. Worked in various capacities in government and in politics in general. And so I'm going to continue to do that work. So my website is still up, LorraineForTexas.com. It has our contact information on there. And also, if you need to reach my official office, I don't know where everyone's located, but if for some reason there is an issue that's a state issue, please don't hesitate to contact us. Our number is 214-565-5663, 214-565-5663 for our official office. If you go on Facebook, type in Lorraine Birabille. I promise you, my name is very unique. I'm the only one on there. You'll find our information on there. And so if we can be of assistance, please do not hesitate to contact us. We also have a COVID-19 resource page up, hd100.org. So if you are in Texas and you are struggling with anything related to COVID, we have that site up. And then also a good friend of mine who we worked together when I worked for the U.S. House of Representatives for Mark Vesey, Jane Hamilton. She was Biden's statewide director during the primary for Super Tuesday. So kudos there. And she stayed on for the general as his strategic advisor. She and I started a nonprofit organization called the Barbara Jordan Leadership Institute. And we actually started it in 2018 when we saw that there was a lack of engagement in majority minority opportunity districts throughout the state of Texas. What we found is that if voter turnout were to increase by about 2% in every one of these Black and brown districts throughout the state of Texas, Texas would be different. I'll just say that. So as under that nonprofit organization, which is nonpartisan, our efforts are really focused on voter education. And so this last election, we were able to do 100,000 live calls. We did 350,000 text messages, 250,000 people reached on digital. And so we're wanting to ramp things up for any election moving forward. And to Kojo's point, the more we have people engaged, the more we have responsive leadership. And so it's important to vote in every election, not just presidential elections. You have school board races, city council races. All of these things have a tremendous impact on your daily life. And one could actually argue even a greater impact than a presidential election. And so if you'd like to get involved with that, our website is bjli.org. That is Barbara Jordan Leadership Institute. That's what that stands for, bjli.org. You can sign up to get involved. You can contribute. But the whole goal is voter education and how that connects to economic and justice and empowerment. And so we've been working with some women who are not dissimilar to the people who are probably listening right now, who are in a position where they want to start a business or what have you, develop career skills so they can take better care of themselves and their families. And so that's really what our organization is about: voter education, how your ballot connects to your opportunities, and fighting for economic justice.
Awesome. Thank you. Kojo, how can we support you and how can we be a part of what you're going to be doing moving forward?
Yeah, no, I love that, Honorable Lorraine. I think for me, I would say that I would just encourage us to ensure that you are registered to vote. all right, that your family and friends and sphere of influence is registered to vote, and that you are voting in all elections. Know who your school board representative is, right? Who your city councilor is, who your county commissioner is, right? And those elections matter, and be civically engaged. When I won my primary, and it became pretty big news because I was the first Ghanaian American to be nominated by a major party for a federal office. There was a young lady and who had worked on the Obama campaign, was living in DC, heard this news, was planning on starting a PAC to encourage children of the diaspora to be politically engaged. And she was planning on doing it maybe a year or 2 years down the line. But when she saw our victory, she said, let me go ahead and do it now. And so she reached out and we partnered, right? And so she started the Ghana Diaspora PAC. And they took on the work of trying to organize all the Ghanaian American communities and the children of the diaspora communities around the country to help support our race, and also to help with Biden, and to help build political power within the diaspora, so that elected officials will take our communities seriously, right? So when we speak up on the need to maintain the diversity visa lottery, or citizenship by naturalization, all these different things, our voices can be taken seriously because we are at the table and we're advocating and we're exercising our power. All right, so those things can happen, but so no matter where you are, you need to be activated and engaged, right? So that when organizations like the Ghana Diaspora PAC comes and is looking to organize people, there actually are people who are engaged, who can be activated to do certain things, right? And so that's what I'll do. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm gonna try to update people there. My Facebook page, which was Koja for Congress, we're gonna rebrand that as Koja for the People, right? And try to encourage people to get engaged and get in the game. I just got a call yesterday from a young man, first generation Ghanaian American in OKC, and he's running for the city council there in Ward 1. And he was like, hey, can I get some advice? How did you raise money? How did you do XYZ? And we talked for like 2 hours, right? And so I was so glad to hear that, and he was inspired by our run. And so that's what we need to do. And we all need to, it's the 21st century. We can connect online, we can connect by phone, and encourage each other to get in the game. All right. And so that's kind of my message to people. Like, don't sit on the sidelines. It's not a spectator sport. Superman is not coming to save us. Nobody's coming to save us. In fact, we have to tap ourselves on the shoulder, and we have to run, even if it means running right after graduate law school and having a baby in your hand, right? You're doing it for a bigger purpose, right? And you're serving a greater cause beyond just yourself. And I'm a new dad as well. I have a 7-month-old daughter, and it changes your perspective, right? So it's no longer about you, it's about the next generation. And so let's do it for them.
Right. Thank you both for sharing. I know that a lot of us want to serve. We want to get plugged in. We want to be a part, but sometimes people don't know how to. And just from listening to you, they can get an idea. And if there are any such programs that you have, the Immigrant Mom is a great place to, share that with us, so we can put it out to the other immigrant moms who, will be interested in being a part, in adding their voice, in changing, the fabric of the nation. So thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your time. And to our audience, I'm really pleased to have had you stay on with us to learn a lot, because we know knowledge makes a difference. You cannot act on what you don't know. Until next 2 Thursdays, this has been Excel with the Immigrant Mom. Have a great night, and God bless you.